Prep Beat. It's Thomas Lawrence. I'm TJ Holmes. Today we're previewing Week 2 of Prep football action. And Thomas, our game of the week is Enterprise at West Valley. A big rematch of last year's Division I quarterfinals where Enterprise went to the pasture and knocked off West Valley. The Hornets got a big win last week against Del Campo at home. Beat them up pretty badly. West Valley beat up Shasta pretty badly also last week.
Yeah. This is a matchup of two teams that are both number 2 in their division, D1 for Enterprise, D2 for West Valley, and a couple of programs, especially this year, that pride themselves on having a bunch of different weapons, but they both got that go-to guy. For Enterprise, it's Brad Woods, 231 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns on the ground last week. Austin Clark for West Valley, the junior, 2 touchdowns on the ground, 2 interceptions, and so, they like to spread the ball around, but they both have faith in those guys when it comes down to it.
Yeah, obviously those two are the focal points of these two teams. They're the big time playmakers. Who are a couple guys this week to kind of look at that are out of the spotlight, not a little bit less than Brad Woods and Austin Clark?
For this kind of thing, you usually don't talk about the senior quarterback, but in this case, I am. Both of these guys, Zach Trueblood for Enterprise, Dalton Tracy for West Valley, they're new to the varsity level this year. We know Enterprise likes to throw the ball a little bit more, but they haven't seen a defense quite like West Valley yet, at least in the regular season. And for Dalton Tracy, he doesn't throw the ball much. West Valley doesn't throw the ball much. When he does, he's been effective, but it might be the first time that West Valley's had to play from behind, so we'll see how he fares in a potential situation where Enterprise knows he's going to throw the ball.
Yeah, exactly. You just broke down those, both sides a little bit there. What's gonna happen? What has to happen for each team to prevail in this one? What is maybe a key to success?
For me, it's tempo and ball control. For West Valley, they've scored a bunch of points. They've scored 41 points in each of the first 2 games they've played, but they haven't played this Enterprise team that can switch, as you told me, between the spread offense and the I formation offense. So I think West Valley is going to want to play a grinding kind of field position game in order to give them a good chance against West Valley, a good chance against Enterprise.
Yeah, and then going from that big time section matchup right there, going out of the area down to El Dorado Hills where Foothill and Placer of Auburn are going to be squaring off. Both these teams are ranked in the Division II in the ESPN rankings in the top 5 in NorCal, both ranked in the top 25 in NorCal. So this is a big matchup for not only Foothill and their program, how far it's come, but maybe also for the whole northern section, maybe getting a bowl bid this year.
Yeah, and for Placer, they've got a blue chip lineman, Eddie Vander does, a really massive guy who's huge on the line. He also can line up as a tight end in their wing T offense and create some big mismatches potentially for Foothill.
Yeah, and then the wing T hasn't been Foothill's strong suit on defense lately. They've lost to Paradise the last 2 years and up on the ridge, to a wing T team. And looking at Eddie Vander does what he can do, that might hurt them a little bit. But offensively, they have a guy, Ryan Pollard, at quarterback, who threw a school record 5 touchdowns last week. It might need to happen that he might need to throw some quick scores in this one to kind of get back on track in case that wing T does what it's supposed to do and grind it out against the undersized Foothill defense.
Yeah, and Foothill's a team looking to build off a strong start. CV, on the other hand, coming home for the first time. They're trying to get back on track after a couple of losses to start the year, but it won't be easy because they're coming home to play the defending D2 champion in Orland.
Yeah, it doesn't get any easier for Central Valley. They go to River Valley, to Sutter, 2 long road trips. Then they finally come home. They can get back on track, like you said. But, against the defending Division II champion Orland, one thing is that they are historically, have beaten Orland. Looking at that slide right there, they've beaten them 6 straight times, averaging more than 35 points a game, margin of victory. That's not 35 points a game for them on offense. That's margin of victory. So they've kind of handed them some butt kicking in the past.
Absolutely. And back over on the west side of Reading, Shasta's a team that's looking to get back on track as well. They're playing a Eureka team from the North Coast section that started out as state ranked in the division, but the Loggers are giving up a bunch of points, and if Shasta rides Avery Holly, might be a good chance for them to get a win and stay in that top 5 in Division I.
Yeah, they lost to West Valley last week, so they got to come back and get a win in this one against a former ranked team, Eureka. Eureka's had some problems. Like you mentioned, Avery Holly being their focal point. We've all kind of known that this year, their running game. One thing I kind of want to look at is if they have a quarterback controversy this week because of the way Bailey Odell came in the 4th quarter last week against West Valley, threw for over 100 yards. Yeah, it was garbage time, but he still produced results. Yeah, he threw an interception, but he still chucked the ball around pretty well. And so Casey Toombs could kind of be looking over his shoulder a little bit this week.
Absolutely.
And then moving on to another game, the rest of the other games in the area, you got Red Bluff at Anderson. Red Bluff's beaten Anderson 3 straight times. They had over 400 yards of offense against Oroville last week. So this is a little bit step up from Oroville, playing an Anderson team in Anderson.
Yeah, Bernie's coming down to UPrep, Division 4 team, and Bernie against D3 UPrep. Both teams started off the season with a loss, got a win last week. Bernie beat rival Fall River on the road for the first time in 22 matchups, and UPrep kind of unloaded on Mount Shasta and got its offense going.
Yeah, and then next you look at Hoopa Valley at Trinity. Trinity's off to an 0-2 start, not the start that they wanted, and they lost to Arcata last week. Right now they're hosting Hoopa Valley, who has been one of those top teams in the North Coast section the past few years with quite a few wins, 8 wins each the past two or three seasons.
Yeah. And Fall River, like I mentioned, coming off a rare tough loss to their rival. They're facing Chester, who's at the number 3 spot in Division 4 in the Northern Section media poll right now. Fall River at number 4, so it should be kind of a good test to see where both teams are at and where they might stack up at the end of this season.
Yeah, and then lastly, you got Reading Christian down 8-man football going to Westwood, this week. And you mentioned Reading Christian as a team on the rise in your blog. And last week, Hayden Piper over 400 yards by himself. 4 touchdowns. He can really get this team going, and Reading Christian could get off that 3-0 start. They could really be on the fast track for the playoffs this season. Absolutely. So that's going to do it for our Game of the Week previews, and make sure you check out prepbeat.com for everything regarding high school sports.